I'm I'm Bruce, K1BG, and hang on a second. The first thing I guess I have to do is share my screen, right? And it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Now try.
Oh yeah, there we go. All right. Can everyone see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Terrific. So I'm Bruce K1BG. I'm going to be talking tonight about an interesting program called CW Academy. And it sounds like a number of people here tonight have already have some experience with CW Academy, and that's great. But for everyone else, I want to make the basic introduction. If you have questions, please let me know. I'm not going to be monitoring the chat, so I don't know if somebody else can monitor the chat for me. But if you have questions, please feel free to come off of mute and ask me a question. Okay. So here we go. Joe Fisher, AATA, originally put this presentation together. CW Academy, a solution for perpetuating, a possible solution for perpetuating CW. And they say, Picasso used to say, good artists borrow, great artists steal. I like to think I borrowed the presentation from Joe. I made a few corrections and changes myself, but it's pretty much his presentation, and he should get credit for it. So do folks still do CW? They most definitely do. There's lots of different reasons people like and enjoy CW, and they're varied. QRPers really like it because CW has the ability to propagate pretty well compared to particularly voice modes. But there's a whole range of activities these days that CW kind of really dovetails in nicely with. Whether that's parks on the air, summits on the air, QRP work, there's a whole range of things. I don't know how many people out here know where the term CW comes from and why it's synonymous with Morse code. But if you go back into the dark ages of amateur radio history, the original technique for communicating was a technique called spark gap. And spark was, to simplify things, a dampened wave, not a continuous wave. And people say, well, I don't understand that. What does that mean? Think of like when you pluck a guitar string, that's a dampened wave. The air will resist the vibration of the guitar string, and eventually the sound will stop. Whereas something like an electric organ is an amplified circuit. There's an oscillator there, and that will oscillate continuously forever. And so think of CW as being vacuum tubes and oscillators, and think of spark gap as being dampened wave. And so when the technology transitioned from spark gap to vacuum tube, it transitioned from spark gap to continuous wave, and Morse code just became synonymous, or CW became synonymous with Morse code, and that's why people call it CW. So anyway, people are most definitely still doing Morse code and CW. Some pre-COVID numbers on the last ARRL field day before COVID. Certainly a large representation of participants were using Morse code and made a lot of contacts. So about CW Academy, there's an organization, a worldwide organization of Morse code enthusiasts called CW Ops. It was created by the organization and its members. There's generally between 80 and 100 volunteer advisors. They call themselves advisors, not teachers. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. 4 levels of training, 3 semesters per year, 8 weeks per semester. And typically you meet twice a week for those 8 weeks. So it's 16 review sessions. The program's been hugely popular. More than 5,000 students since 2015 have completed the classes. Things vary time and day by instructor. You know, when I set up a class with my students, I give them the option as to when they want to meet, what times they want to meet, those kinds of things. I have a pretty flexible schedule, other than Thursday nights, which are terrible for me because I have other amateur radio activities that go on Thursday nights. Typically 4 to 5 students per class. Sometimes you'll get 6 or 7. I've had as few as 1 student per class, and that student was particularly lucky because they got a lot of individual attention. But one of the secrets to the success of CW Academy is that there's a lot of focus with the class advisor and the individual students. And there's also a certain amount of camaraderie and peer pressure between the few students themselves. They get to know each other very well. So it works pretty well. Some people would say, best of all, the price is right. There's no charge for CW Academy. All we ask is that you focus and participate in the class. It's done purely on an all volunteer or all amateur basis. So what's involved? So an advisor leads the class. We call ourselves advisors rather than teachers because really the class are review sessions. The students are more or less self-teaching themselves. There's a curriculum that they follow. We'll talk a little bit about this. But we generally, after a particular lesson, we have a review class. We focus on the student, what they're doing right, what they need improvement on. They'll come to us and say, I'm having a problem with this, I'm noticing this. We'll try to set them right. The speeds are always set at a minimum of 20 words per minute using Farnsworth technique. I don't know how much people are aware of Farnsworth, but what this means is that you send the characters at a much higher speed and you increase the space between the letters as you send them. This does 2 things. Number 1, it allows the student to actually listen and learn the sound of the character being sent at a higher speed, so that they don't have to relearn it at a higher speed as they get more proficient later. The second thing it does is it gives them more time between the characters to actually recognize what the character is. One of the things we work on is something called instant character recognition. As your character recognition gets faster and faster, essentially the speed at which you can copy Morse code gets faster and faster. So instant character recognition is one of the things that the whole CW Academy program focuses on. And in the very first classes where we're actually teaching the Morse letters, we introduce those letters as they're used in the English language. So interestingly enough, the first message is T, E, A, and N. And when Morse code was developed, there was a method to it. The shorter characters are the most common used letters in the English language. So DIT is the shortest character you're going to get, which is the letter E, which turns out is the most commonly used letter. So you really, as we get into learning the individual letters, you find things like X, Q, and Z, which aren't used that much in the English language. They come at the very end of the learning process. Why is this not advancing? Here we go. So what's required to participate? A set of paddles, iambic or single lever paddles, some type of device for making the Morse code sound. So you either need an electronic keyer, which turns the input from the paddles into dits and dahs, or a transceiver with an internal keyer built in. You need a computer, obviously, a webcam and a microphone, because these classes are typically done using Zoom. And really good internet access is almost an absolute requirement. I had a student who actually did the class using his smartphone as a hotspot. He lived in a rural area, and literally his Wi-Fi hotspot on his cell phone was the only high-speed access that he had. It became challenging. It wasn't that easy, but these are really the things that you need to participate. One of the questions asked all the time is, what if I want to use a straight key? And by the way, I'll tell people there is absolutely nothing wrong with a straight key. I use straight keys all the time. I have them in my shack. Here's my trusty J38. I really enjoy straight keys, but when it comes to the CW Academy methodology, we try to start people learning code at a higher speed right out of the chute, okay? And what this means is learning the proper way to send, listening to properly sent Morse code, and listening to it at relatively high speed. And so we start straight out using paddles and a keyer. And we feel that really gets around some impediments in learning the code. So again, we focus on keyers and paddles, not on hand keys. There are 4 levels to CW Academy. The first being the beginner level, and just as it sounds, this is geared towards the person who has no experience with Morse code or very little experience with Morse code. One of the things they say is if your code speed is under 10 to 12 words per minute, I think that's a little bit high. I've had students graduate my beginner level who were still in the 6 or 7 word per minute range, and they went on to the next level. So really, it's really designed for the people with absolutely no prior Morse code experience. Okay. You get a handbook, a lesson guide that's provided for you to study on a weekly basis with each lesson. There's an online program called Morse Code Trainer that's geared towards the curriculum. So in other words, you have an online server that will send Morse code to you properly. Proper timing, proper spacing, proper Farnsworth, so that you can actually hear and listen to code being properly sent to you, okay? And after session 10, on-the-air activity is emphasized. Why session 10? Session 10 is the session where we go through the letters XQZ, the last remaining letters in the alphabet. And so essentially the student should have learned all of the letters in the alphabet by session 10, and therefore you are ready to get on the air. Whether you feel comfortable or not is a different question, but in my experience, it's never too soon to start getting on the air and using what you have learned in CW Academy. I see this all the time. I see students who'll say to me, okay, Bruce, I want to take your class, and I'll agree after session 10, when I've learned all the letters, I will get on the air and use it. And so at the end of session 10, they've done a great job. They know the Morse code, and I'll ask them, it's time for you to get on the air. Well, I want to wait until I'm up to 8 words per minute before I get on the air. I'm really uncomfortable. And I'll say, well, we made a deal. You're going to use this. Well, give me a couple of more weeks. And so they get up to 8 words per minute, and they put it off to 10 words per minute, and then they put it off to 12 words per minute. And then they'll come to me and say, well, I've signed up for the next level, for the basic level. And my response is, yes, but we had an agreement that you're learning the Morse code in order to get on the air. So I really like to encourage you, if you take CW Academy, start using it right away. There's lots and lots and lots of Morse code enthusiasts, hams out there that want to help people who are new with Morse code make contacts with it, get on the air with it. And so the ultimate goal at the end of the beginner level is to get all of the students on the air and using the Morse code. And then, by the way, it ceases to become practice. It just becomes enjoyment. You're using the code, you're making contacts, you're meeting people. Presumably, you're enjoying yourself. What's expected to succeed? Attend the online sessions. There's 2 a week. And then the secret to learning Morse code. And this is the secret to learning Morse code regardless of what method you use. And there's lots of methods out there. You have to practice a little bit every day. The recommendation is 45 minutes to an hour a day. You can break this up into 2 or 3 different short periods. You don't want to burn out by doing this, but I always know if my students have been challenged during a particular week, I can immediately tell, because they'll tend to regress a little bit. I can immediately tell if my students haven't practiced every day. And this is really the secret to learning Morse code, is you've got to do a little bit of practice every day until it becomes second nature. The goals for the end of the class, obviously, you learn all of your letters, numbers, punctuation, prosine. We try to teach students a little bit about instant character recognition. That's still really hard at the end of the beginner level. There are some students that start to get faster, but it's still pretty much you're just beginning. We teach a lot, this is an 8-week program. You've learned the code after the 5 weeks. People say, what's the next 3 weeks all about? Well, we continue to practice the things we've learned, but we also talk about operating procedure. How do you call CQ? How do you answer CQ? How does that first basic conversation go where you exchange a signal report and your QTH, meaning your location, and your name? And how do you go about doing all of that? And so that's really what the last few weeks is what we focus on the last few weeks, so that you can use the skills, the Morse code that you've learned, for actually making on-the-air contacts. And we'll talk about other things too, not just rag chewing. We'll talk about what happens if you get on the air and you hear a contest, for instance. What does that mean? What do you do in a pileup if there's a de-expedition and you hear a pileup? What does that mean? So we go over a number of different scenarios to help the students actually use what they've learned on the air. Okay, anybody have any questions regarding the beginner level? Because that's the level, if you've got no prior experience with Morse code, that's where you would jump in. Anybody? Okay, good. So the second level up the ladder is the basic level. The basic level, basically, if you already know your characters and numbers, you're probably ready for the basic level. There is no requirement in CW Academy that you go step by step by step by step. In other words, if you have some prior Morse code knowledge and experience, already know the characters and the numbers, you may want to jump directly into the basic level, okay? And so here the advisors work with the students to do things like increase their head copy, work on their sending skills, again, work on skills for conversational contacts, how to really get into the conversations. And again, it's 16 sessions, lots and lots in this particular case of on-the-air contacts. I have not been an advisor for the basic level, but I understand there are advisors that really push the students towards making on-the-air contacts as opposed to the half hour to 45 minutes a day of just boring practice kind of thing. The third level up is the intermediate level, and this is, again, your code speed is a little bit higher. You've already developed some instant character recognition skills, and you're trying to get just more proficient at Morse code. And the objectives, I think, are kind of more of the same. Focus on head copy. Use some of the software tools that are out there. I don't know how many of you have played with programs like RUFZ and Morse Runner, but these are interesting programs that push the students. RUFZ, if you use it as it installs without making any changes to it, has a library of call signs, and it sends the student a call sign. It's a Windows-based program. It sends the student a call sign, and if you enter it correctly, it will increase the speed of the next call sign it sends to you by, I believe it's by 3%. So even if you are the best Morse code operator in the world, eventually RUFZ will send to you so fast that you're not capable of copying the call sign correctly. And then on the next one, it decreases the speed by 3%. So theoretically, you're supposed to kind of find right where your optimum speed is. Morse Runner is slightly different. Morse Runner simulates a CQ Worldwide DX contest, but you run this contest again. This contest runs on your laptop using Windows. So with both of these programs, you're free to make as many mistakes as you possibly can, and the programs will push you to improve your Morse code speed. There's also a focus to start recognizing words as sounds, and I'll try to explain this. If you've ever worked with children learning how to read, they're always taught, the first thing they're taught is the ABC song, and then they're taught the sound of the character they're looking at. So if they see a C, they know the sound is ka. If they see an A, they know the sound is ah. If they see a T, they know the sound is ta. And so they'll read that in a book, and they'll see the word cat, but they sound it out as CAT. Eventually, when you learn to read, you make a jump between reading an individual character and reading a whole word. And you notice, you'll read things where a word's been misspelled and you read right past it because you just don't even see the misspelling. You're reading the whole word as opposed to reading the individual character. And this is something that will happen in conversational Morse code. You'll get to the point where you'll start recognizing whole words by the sound as opposed to recognizing the individual letters. And this allows you, again, a great increase in copying speed. And this is one of the things they try to focus on at the intermediate level. The advanced level is the top level. And again, it's if you can head copy between 15 and 20 words per minute, and you want to improve your speed 25 words per minute and up kind of thing, okay? And it's the same thing, practice, a little bit of practice every day, lots of on-the-air sessions. Many advanced course graduates of the advanced course become members in CW Academy, in CW Ops. One of the requirements for CW Ops is to be able to carry on a conversation roughly in the range of 25 words per minute. And there are many, many graduates at the advanced level who have achieved these kinds of skills. CW Academy also has a youth program. And again, I am the person right now who's doing most of the youth program. I had a conversation with Rob K6RB probably about 5 or 6 years ago at the Dayton Hamvention. At the time, there was almost a 3-year waiting list to take the beginner's level. And, you know, I expressed my frustration in the fact that if you take a 15-year-old student and you tell them that they have to wait 3 years to take this class, they get very frustrated. Time moves very differently when you're a young person than it does for an older person. And Rob shook his head and looked at me and said, well, what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, how about we do this youth program? So we try to lump young people into their own classes. For them, it works really well because they feel more comfortable. They feel more comfortable with other young people. They develop really close friendships. We fast track the waiting list, and really the intention here is to either help them get on the air with Morse code, or in some cases get licensed. There are still countries in the world where Morse code, there is a Morse code requirement. And I have had a number of students here in the US decide that they want to get into amateur radio the more traditional way, learn the Morse code first and then get a license. And there has been some work done. MFJ has a nice program for youth students. And there's been some other works along those lines, other things along those lines being done. So it is a really excellent youth program. I just got finished 2 weeks ago with four new CW operators, all between the ages of 14 and 19 years old in this particular class. As far as advisors go, we can always, CW Academy can always use additional advisors. You don't have to be a member of CW Ops to be a CW Academy advisor. All we ask is that you have a knowledge and a love of Morse code, and that you're interested in helping the next generation of amateur radio operators. I have to tell you that this is one of the most satisfying activities I've ever participated in with regards to amateur radio. It's really fun having these students. It's really fun watching them learn. It's absolutely phenomenal calling CQ on 40 meters and having a former student call you back out of the blue just to say, hello, how are things going? And I've had that experience multiple times. It's really great. So it's a good program, and it's a great feeling participating in it. If you want to sign up for CW Academy, visit the CW Ops website. You do a quick search on CW Academy on Google. You'll immediately find it. They also have a really good CW resources page where you can find out more about Morse code and CW in general. So, does anybody have any questions? So I always get worried when I don't hear anything.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
N5XHI in Texas. I just finished the class on the beginners, and I'm studying to try to start the basic class. I noticed that they're sending ICR at 25 at 4. In other words, 25 at 4 Farnsworth. Where should I be sending as a student? Should I be sending at 20 and 10 Farnsworth, or what?
So look, you know, and again, Jeff, it really kind of depends, okay? And by that, I mean the following. Farnsworth is a great tool for learning, okay? And if you're in a class with other students and you're sending back and forth, then you send using the Farnsworth method, and you try to keep your character speed high. One of the reasons you want the character speed high is so that you learn the sound as opposed to starting to count dits and das. You know, when I was learning the code, it was, you know, well, a B is da, dit, 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 right? Da and 3 dits is a B. You don't want to learn that. You want to learn da, dit, dit, dit. You want to learn the sound, right? But if you're getting on the air, I tell my students, whatever is kind of comfortable when you're on the air with the sending, you know, whatever you're comfortable receiving, just don't do it. Just don't send so fast. The person who answers you is going to send at the same speed you're sending at. Send in something that you're comfortable with. Have you been on the air at all with this, Jeff?
I have not. I just finished the course less than a week ago?
It's never too early to get on and call CQ. I tell all of my students, I kick them out of the nest, you know. They're ready to flap their wings. They're just afraid to flap their wings. And I like to get my students out making contacts. So that's kind of what I would recommend to you. Give it a try.
Yeah, the only problem with me sending is I got probably an S10 if they make such a thing. S9 noise level and just crazy.
Yeah, that I can't help you with.
Right, but I enjoyed the class. So everybody's hearing, I enjoyed the class, and I really highly recommend it. If you want to learn CW, it was fantastic, and I had a great advisor, so it was good.
Good. I've given this talk a number of times. Sometimes I'll get like 50 questions, and sometimes I get no questions. So I've actually come up with a list of questions that we could talk about. But does anybody else have any questions? Anything they want to talk about?
Yeah,
I have a question. Okay.
John G0 EWI.
Hi, John. How are you?
Okay, thank you. Thanks so far. Could you tell me a bit more about words and sounds recognition?
So you mean instant character recognition and listening to whole words as opposed to just the letters?
Yes.
Yeah, so instant character recognition essentially, as your speed improves, essentially what happens is you learn the letter and it becomes a reflexive thing. If you hear something like this, sorry, that's the letter V. When you first memorize these, it may take you a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds when you hear to recognize that it's V, okay? Instant character recognition is literally what it says. How do you speed up that recognition time, okay? Whereas whole word copy is not just stringing the letters together in the word, but actually hearing the word as a word itself, okay? So, you know, when we talk, you don't listen. When we talk, you don't hear individual letters. You hear the whole words. When you read, when you're starting to read, you recognize individual letters and you sound them out, but eventually you just start reading whole words. And something similar happens with Morse code. It's the only way I can explain it.
Right. Thank you.
This is
Hello.
KD9R. Yeah, this is Gordon in Indianapolis, KD9RUE. Bruce, are there people, and I'm talking about myself, that can't learn Morse code because it requires that recognition of sounds and, you know, like learning disability with CW is just something I'm struggling with. I've been trying to teach myself using the Kosh method. I've tried the Farnsworth method, and, you know, getting up to speed, it just becomes, I'm wanting to build tables in my head and to translate out of the tables, and you can't get anywhere that way.
So Gordon, first of all, my advice is don't build tables and do these things, okay? there, I don't want to, one of the questions I have, which I'll go here, is, what's the best way to learn Morse code? Okay. And I would love to tell you that CW Academy is better than any other way that has ever been devised, except that I'm not going to tell you that because I don't know that's true. Okay. The answer is the best method for learning Morse code is the method that works for you. Okay. Everybody learns differently, and no two people learn exactly the same. We think we have a good program, and we think we've gone past a lot of the obstacles that people have had to deal with in the past, but nevertheless, it's what works for you. I never found out I was dyslexic until I had my own dyslexic children, and I was basically told when I was a kid that I was not interested in learning. I was disruptive in class. All of these things. I think the biggest impediment to learning the code is one of discipline. You have to study every day. And I know in my own Morse code journey 50 years ago, I tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed until I buckled down and for 45 minutes a day sat there and made sure I was doing practice and getting practice every day. And then it started to come. I don't know if that helps you, and I don't want to say that everybody can learn the Morse code because I don't know that for a fact, but I will tell you I've had numerous students who came to me and said, Bruce, I didn't believe I could learn the Morse code. I've been trying for years and years and years and years, and somehow I have learned Morse code with CW Academy. And my gut feeling, the reason for that is because CW Academy really pushes and focuses on the half hour to 45 minutes a day. So
Okay, well, I'm signed up for it, so we're going to find out. Thanks a lot.
Oh, question from David, Bruce.
Gordon, be really disciplined about the half hour to 45 minutes a day. I tell my students, if you have a smartphone, pick a time every day you're going to do that work and program an alarm in your phone, okay? And dedicate yourself to doing the work. It will make a difference. David, go ahead.
Oh, hello, my name's David Shaw. I'm in London, G4NOW. I learnt Morse up to about 15 words a minute, I suppose 30, 40 years ago. And I never ever used it on the air. We had to do it to get the license. The question I've got is a couple of questions. Do you have a dropout rate at the different levels? Do people say, I just can't do it? Because I'm rather intrigued because quite clearly there is this need to get on the air once you've done more. So that's, well, sort of one question. The second question is, I wasn't certain why you needed a paddle key and not a straight key. That's the second question. And there was a third question. It's gone from me, but maybe if you could answer the other two, it'll come back to me, please. Thank you very much.
So as far as dropout rate goes, David, typically people drop the class because they can't keep up with the half hour to 45 minutes a day, okay? They'll come back and say, well, something happened at work, or something happened on business trip, or something happened with family, or whatever it is, okay? And what's interesting is that I'll have students who will go for the first, 2, 3, 4 weeks who'll do fantastic. And then all of a sudden we'll come to a session and they've regressed. And I'll say, what happened this week? And they'll say, well, such and such thing happened this week, and I just haven't been able to do any work at all. And you can almost tell immediately when that happens. I suppose I'm now feeling guilty for, because growing up, I would see the look on my teachers' faces when I told them that, the dog ate the homework kind of thing. And it was really me not doing the work. And they knew I wasn't doing the work, but it's just one of those things, right? So I'm really a strong believer. If you focus, it will come. Second thing, as far as the hand key goes, there's two parts to this. For one thing, we try to get students to understand the proper rhythm of the Morse code, the proper way to send it, right? And the problem is when you start practicing on a hand key, the code can be really sloppy and also really slow. It's hard to send Morse code, okay, a character speed of 20 words per minute, particularly using the up and down motion of the hand key, okay? And to be honest, most people don't know this. Experienced telegraph operators for the last 100 years did not use traditional hand keys. They used paddles, or they used what was called cootie keys in the old days, right and left keys, because up and down you'll get carpal tunnel syndrome very fast, okay? Yeah. What the paddles teach you to do is they take care of the timing for you. So they'll teach you the proper way to send. They'll get your ear in tune of the proper timing of the letters that are being sent, okay? So that at a later time, if you decide that you're interested in hand keys or you're interested in bugs, some of these other devices for sending manually, you already know the way the character is supposed to sound, and therefore it will help you in proper sending. Right. The other thing is that you want to learn at a higher speed so that this character, okay, is not da with 3 dits, it's B. Okay? And if you start sending the way I learned it, you start counting the dits and the das. So the idea is you do it at higher speed and you listen to the sound, not the counting.
Thank you. I know my other questions were the sessions. You haven't mentioned anything about the timing of the sessions. And the final question, when I learned, somebody said, whatever you do, don't start playing with a key till you've got it in your brain that you can hear the sounds. You know, and a lot of people used to say, don't touch a key till you've got the code in your head.
I'm not going to argue one way or another. I know personally, one of the breakthroughs when I was learning as a kid was when I started sending to myself. Because if I want to send the letter B, I have to think, what is the letter B? And you start working on the character recognition, okay? Some people learn the other way, David. You know, you talk to a lot of people and what's the best way to learn? Well, I learned this way, so that must be the best way. I don't know that's necessarily true, but I will tell you that I wouldn't advise anyone to learn the Morse code the way I originally learned the Morse code, because I did it through a word association or a letter association, and then I couldn't associate the letters fast enough to build any kind of speed. I had to get used to actually learning the sound, right? Yeah. But you had another question as well.
It was about the sessions. I can understand the guys that, you know, miss a session. You know, I used to be really busy. I'm retired now, so I could attend everything. But I mean, what time are they? And obviously you're international.
So again, depending on where your advisor is, you work that out with your advisor. Some of them will say, I'm available to advise Tuesdays and Fridays at such and such GMT. It just depends. I know for me, there's 7 days in a week. So I like to split them up so that there's 2 days between classes and then 3 days between classes. So it's not like you're doing a Monday and Tuesday and then you have to wait the whole week again, right?
I got it.
The sessions typically last 1 hour, okay? Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes when you're beginning a little bit less, because there's not enough letters when you're starting out, right? And that's typically it. And also, this is not, I tell my students that this is not like you're studying for a university degree, okay? If something comes up and you can't make one of the sessions, okay, that's that doesn't bother me particularly, okay, because I'm not being graded on my performance, really, okay? And as long as you're doing the work and keeping up with the lesson, in other words, if you can't make the session, but you can do the 30 to 45 minutes a day for that night and move on to the next lesson, then there's no reason why you can't keep up with the class.
Thank you. Thank you very much from Greenwich in London. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, anyone remember what the secret to learning Morse code is?
Character recognition.
Every day.
Practice a little bit every day.
Yeah.
That is the secret. We recommend, 45 to 60 minutes. I've had students come to me and say, Bruce, I missed a day, so I did 3 hours. And I'm like, stop. The goal here is not to burn anyone out, and you get past the point of diminishing returns, right? And just enough that you improve a little bit and you get a little bit better every day. Is there a best way to learn Morse code? The answer, the best way is the way that works for you, but there are bad ways to learn Morse code. Anything where there's an association. I saw one thing online. This guy put out what looked like a spreadsheet. If it's a dit, you go this way down the spreadsheet. If it's a die, you go that way down the spreadsheet, right? And if it's a dit, it could be an E, or if there's 2 dits, it could be an I, or if there's 3, and you go down the spreadsheet. And I'm like, yeah, you may be able to program a computer to do that, but you can't program a person to do that because the letter is way past you by the time you get to the bottom of the flowchart. So anything where there's a word association or sound association is really hard. What other programs are out there? I get asked this question. There are good programs that are out there. There is something called LCWO, Learn CW Online. It uses what's called the Koch or the Koch method, okay? And in this method, you introduce 1 or 2 characters at a time, okay? And you slowly learn the Morse code. It's effective for some people who are self-studying. What you don't get is any personalized attention. So you may learn all the letters and the numbers, but then have no idea how to call a CQ, how to answer a CQ, how the proper conversation goes, any of those kinds of things. We have a program over here called Long Island CW Club. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. A lot of people like it. The pluses are they run classes all of the time. So if it's Tuesday night at 5 o'clock and you might say, hey, I got a few minutes, maybe there's a class now. You may find that there is a class then. You may go there, though, and find that there are 30 people attending the class. And you don't get the kind of individual attention that you need. But there are other programs that are out there, and there are some good ones out there. There's also a lot.
Sorry, go on.
Question?
Yeah, go on. No, it's okay. I'll ask you.
There are also software tools. We talked about RUFZ. We talked about Morse Runner. There's a page, a CW resources page on the CW Ops website where you can find some of these tools. And again, I recommend go to the CW Academy website that's under the CW Ops, and you'll find all kinds of resources there that talk about this. And that's about it, Andy. Unless there's more questions, more conversation, I'm happy to stay for as long as people want to talk.
Great. Well, first of all, there's two attendees with their hands up to ask a question. Michelle and also YB9DRB has got his hand up. But there's been a question asked on chat from India Uniform 8 Papa Whiskey Papa, saying what would be a good target word per minute in order to have a QSO?
If it's the first QSO that you're ever having, My answer would be 5 words per minute.
Mhm.
Memorizing the code, if you memorize the code, you're probably at around 5 words per minute. And that's where I had my first contact. That's where many people had their first contact. I know in the UK, back in the old days, the requirement in the UK was what, 10 words per minute or 12 words per minute?
Yeah, 10.
Was it 10?
10,
Okay.
yeah.
No, it was 12.
Was 12?
12.
Yeah, I thought it was
I
12.
learned to I learned to 18. So when I took the 12, it appeared
So
slower.
Wow.
what's interesting about that is that it was 13 words per minute in the US until the novice license came in 1951, where it was dropped to 5 words per minute. And what they found was that if you learned the code and started getting on the air at 5 words per minute with no Farnsworth, you would get up 18 words per minute, and then you would hit a plateau where you kind of had to relearn the letters at a higher speed. I don't know if that's true or not, but this is kind of the argument that I've heard. But I would say as soon as you've memorized the code, start getting on the air and using it. Why not?
I think it's an interesting thing about the speed, if I could just jump in quickly. I think it's an interesting thing about the speed because my father taught CW in the RAF, so I had a slight advantage. And he taught me, and he did. I mean, I don't think he knew anything called the Farnsworth method. He just knew that in the RAF they taught the sound, and it was fast, and you learnt the sound. You didn't learn the letters. So it's the same principle, and it worked a treat. But I have to say, that was so long ago. It was about 37 years ago that I really must brush it up a bit. But enough of me.
It's like riding a bike, John. It'll come back.
Yeah, I hope so.
Question again.
So Michelle's been waiting a long
Yeah,
time
he's
with his
been waiting
hands
for a
up.
long while.
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle. We can't hear you.
Can't hear you. Do you want to try again? Okay, if we move to Yankee Bravo 9 Delta Romeo Bravo, we'll see if Michelle can sort his audio out.
Yes.
Good evening.
Wahid Toto Wahid from Bali, Indonesia. Do you hear me?
Yes,
We do.
yes.
Good evening.
Oh, yeah, good evening. It's very early morning in Indonesia right now. Thank you, Ham Radio Network and Bruce. It's good chance today to hear from you. I was a student of Victor Rosenthal from, I think last time he was in Haifa, Israel. But I failed for the beginner class in CW Ops. And this year I started to learn a game from someone I know from Johannesburg, South Africa. From the reading that I got, a recommended speed word per minute is 20. And I started to that speed, but it seemed a little bit difficult for me. Is it possible to lower down the speed to, let's say, 17 or 16, which is comfortable to me? Then later on, I increase the speed. I need your suggestion, Bruce.
So look, you know, the things that we watch out for are counting the dits and the das, right? Okay. And I know I used to start out at 20 words per minute, and I still had students counting dits and das at 20 words per minute. So now I tend to go even a little bit faster. Okay. I'm not telling you, I won't tell you you can't learn the Morse code at a slower speed, because I'll tell you, I learned it at a much slower speed. I learned it at 5 words per minute. Okay. The issue is, particularly these days, most people, I'll say, well, why do you want to learn the Morse code? Well, I want to do contesting, okay? And contesting requires some higher speed Morse code. And people want to get up to a higher speed as fast as they possibly can, okay? There's nothing wrong with the Morse code at the slower speed if that's what it takes. I just don't know if the CW Academy, the method for CW Academy is the right method for doing that.
I think it is the right method. The only thing at the time I felt is your best recommendation, the 30 to 45 minutes, which is I didn't do it every day, but only 5 minutes, 10 minutes, once or 2 days a week, which is very much less. Anyway, thank you very much for the recommendation of 30 to 45 minutes a day. It's very good. I'll do
You're
it.
welcome. There was a question on the chat about head copy, I think, or
Yeah, is there a speed whereby you should put the pen down and just head copy?
well, I don't know so much about the speed, you know, and I'm teaching the beginner's level, and I try to get my students to put the pen down right from the very beginning, okay? I will tell you, and we could have, there's another whole discussion we could have here, a long discussion. I'm of the opinion that in your brain, there's actually multiple mechanisms that work at the same time, okay? And that the head copy mechanism is, while connected, is a slightly different mechanism than the writing it down mechanism is. And the reason I say that is as follows. For many years, I was more of a contester than anything else. And I could contest easily at 35 words per minute, where I sat at a keyboard and I typed everything I heard went directly into the keyboard, okay? When I started rag chewing, I couldn't carry on a conversation at 20 words per minute. It was impossible. And so that tells me that there's two separate things that are going on. I know somebody who learned their Morse code in the military, and they would copy for 8-hour shifts Russian, this is Soviet, old style Soviet Morse code transmissions at 40 words per minute in a manual, what they called a mill, a manual typewriter. And he would read a book while he was copying Morse code for 8-hour shifts. And he interpreted nothing. And he's a ham radio operator now. And to this very day, he'll type what he's receiving into his computer. And then when the other person passes it over to him, he has to go back and read it because he can't comprehend what he's listening to. It's going from his ears directly to his fingers. So I think there's multiple mechanisms going on. We try to get the students to head copy right from the beginning. But you have to write certain things down. What you put in your logbook, you have to write down. If you're trying to copy the person's call sign, the call sign is not a word. It's just a string of, I don't want to say random, but almost random letters and numbers, and you have to write that down. So, so I don't know if there's a right answer or a wrong answer, but CW Academy focuses on head copy and conversational Morse code, as opposed to what was taught 50 years ago, which was preparing amateurs for a career in the military, copying encrypted code. Remember, you used to get 5-letter groups. They would teach you Morse code, 5-letter random groups kind of thing. That's geared more towards a military kind of experience. So I don't know if I've answered the question, but I've certainly talked long enough. So
Well, Mike has come back and said thank you. I'm finding it easier to head copy than writing down at about 17 words a minute, but remembering it is harder. And
it is, and I can tell you, when I was a teenager, this was back, before personal computers and things. My mother worked in an office where she would get memos that were being thrown out, and she would bring them home, and I would just use the back side, which was blank.
Yeah.
And I used to have stacks and stacks and stacks of papers. And one day I just decided that I was tired of having all of this paper, that I was no longer going to write anything down unless it was what went into my logbook. And that's when I started focusing on head copy. I don't know.
Okay. And K1BG, Mark, he's a CWA advisor, and he's just made a reference saying, Bruce, I'll teach the intermediate, and we start with head copy, 2 letters.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's just, and there you go. But,
Can we try Michelle again now? Because
yes.
we tried it.
He's back.
Sorry for the troubles with my audio. So thank you for your presentation. Bruce, are you still practicing every day? Or
Well,
is there a time that you don't need it?
Me personally, I try to get on the air every day. So, and this is also something I tell my fellow contesters, you know, the thing I hate about contesters is between the contests they're never on the air. What's that all about, right? I want to talk to them and converse with them and do those kinds of things, but I'm typically up early in the morning, and I will get out of bed and I make it a point before I turn the TV on, before I check my email, before I look at my smartphone, before any of that, I go down into the shack and I call CQ, look for a station calling CQ, and I try to have a conversation or two every day. And my advice to people is that, you know, in the modern world, everyone complains that they don't have enough time. I don't understand this, because with all of these tools available to us, we should have more time than we've ever had, because computers are doing everything for us. It's more a question of time management. And I recommend that everybody find a time during the day when they get on the air. And then it's no longer 30 to 45 minutes of practice a day. It's 30 to 45 minutes of talking with someone else, making a new friend, you know, having a conversation with someone you spoke to 6 months ago or a year ago and getting an update on their lives and what they're doing and those kinds of things. And I enjoy doing that, and it's not work. So
Thanks.
David.
You're muted again, David.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, fine. Sorry. Question. I noticed we've got a very international audience tonight. One of the things I've noticed, we're in the south part of London. There's several guys in the club, different speeds. Does the CW Academy ever create what I call local classes? You know, maybe 4 or 5 guys and girls who know each other, or is it always totally random international?
The answer is I don't know. I got a call last year from a woman who ran a youth program at the local, what they call over here, cable television. Each local town has their own little local channel, and they had a youth program in their local town, and her son was 10 years old, and he was absolutely obsessed with everything and anything that had to do with the Titanic.
Right.
And he dragged in 11 of his fellow, you know, cable television youth program enthusiasts, and I gave them their own Morse code class.
Right.
None of them got amateur licenses, although they have been in touch with me and they're talking about that, but they just wanted to learn Morse code.
Fair enough.
And so I did that. There's David, I don't want to say no. I may just be unaware of it. I will tell you though that I know if you go to the CW Academy website, you can download the curriculum.
Okie doke. Okay.
And you can go to the online site for that helps you with learning the code. I know of people who have gone through and taken the entire CW Academy program and never registered for one of the classes. They're just self-taught, right?
Yeah.
And they use the curriculum and they do the practice every day and they do that. So
Fine. Thank you. Thank you again.
there's a program on the east coast of Britain that won an award last year.
I think it's
that won one of the-
Norwich. I think it's Norwich Radio Club.
yes. Okay.
I saw they do an extensive Morse classes. Funny enough, I spotted it on a website. I thought how good it looked, but it's mainly on air rather than it's for in a local area, which is sort of roughly what I'm talking about. Maybe trying to sort something out locally, because we've got guys in our club like me who want to learn it. Those who've learned it, dropped it, and I'm wondering if we could create a sort of club within a club.
I know we have a group in one of the local clubs here that's exactly that. The group is called CW Friends, and they, exchange ideas and help each other. And where exactly are you, David?
We're in Greenwich, southeast London, about 10 miles out, and there's a big radio club here, almost as big as the Norwich one, called the Cray Valley Club. And, it's been going through my mind. I've been on about this because we've made some efforts to get people involved, but we're all at different speeds. And with something as regulated and well run as what you're offering, I'm wondering if that might be our solution.
I don't know.
Okay, thanks. Food for thought. Thank you.
Anyone else with questions, comments?
The only comment that I would make was, and Vicky would vouch for me on this one, is I got through one course and I was actually debating whether to even attempt the next one, and she said, no, come on, stick it out, you got to go for it, come on, you can do this. And I the very first time, because how I do it, Bruce, slightly different with time management. I download the audio files to my phone, and then I just Bluetooth it through my car radio when I'm traveling each day. And I found that definitely works with head copy, 100%, because you've got no way of writing anything down if you're driving. And I found each time I did the leap from 6 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 13, 13 to 15, it was a big struggle, but I just knew after a couple of days of listening to the audio tracks on the resources, the CW Academy resources, I actually mastered at that word a minute, and it was quite good. And that was no dedicated time at all. As soon as I got in the car, hit the file, play it, and it was constantly going. So yeah, so it does work. It does work. I've started on the intermediate resources now because I'm waiting to be loaded onto the next one in May, or hopefully, and already I'm starting to formulate the words, the head copying of words now. So that's quite good. Listening to the short stories, I've gone back to 10 words a minute just to get into the habit of actually being able to follow the short story through. But it's working. It is working.
So again, you're learning to copy the code. I also tell people, and this also takes a while to think about, but there's a rhythm to the Morse code. And the rhythm is almost as important as the learning and knowing the code itself. And the two kind of reinforce each other. So, if you understand the rhythm of a contact, then when you drop in, when you tune across someone and you listen, you immediately know by listening to the syntax, some of the keywords, exactly where they are in the conversation. And it's always easier to copy Morse code if you know or can anticipate what the other person is going to send to you, okay? And I know one of the complaints I get from my students is that they don't like the tapes because you never hear that kind of conversation on the radio, The ARRL has code practice and has done code practice for years. And they transmit the code out of QST magazine. You know, the text out of QST magazine is what they send. And my students say to me, yes, but you know, you never hear, that's not what you hear when you're on the air, kind of thing. And that's, by the way, one of the things when we focus on how to make a contact and what to expect, those are the kinds of things that we focus on. So
I do have a question. This is Vicky.
Hi, Vicky.
Hey, I think my upcoming instructor is on here, if Mark is on here, guiding me into intermediate. The biggest advice that I could give CW Ops, first off, kudos to you guys. Absolutely, first off. Roger in basic, Roland in beginners. Absolutely unbelievable, their guidance to get us through there. I can't say enough words about it. But what I would like to see is they say, find a CW buddy. Child, I went hunting, I called people, I posted on Facebook, I looked on QRZ, and I'm going to find a CW buddy. Because if you can find an individual that's at about the same level that you are so comfortable QSOing with them over the air. A local club, like we've got a guy here, the president of the club, and I'm slow the heck down. I mean, he's at 40 words a minute, push, push, push. I'm not comfortable doing that. I would be comfortable QSOing with Andy, with Rich, with my fellow mates. On Facebook, there is an individual posted, I think it's QSO Now. I don't know if you've seen it or not. But it's for CW Academy to post when you're available. I found no one on it yet. What can we do?
So Vicky, my advice to students, and this is my advice to my own students, you can't control other people's behavior. When I hear somebody calling CQ at 5 words per minute, I answer them back at 5 words per minute. By the way, I've been a ham over 50 years. A couple of months ago, I had the first experience where somebody was calling CQ very, very slowly, and the person came back and said, "You are the first contact I have ever made." Okay, first time that ever happened to me. But I tell people that people in particular are too self-conscious of their own Morse code capabilities, okay? And I say, don't view this as being an adult, okay, in an adult world. View this as like learning how to walk, okay? When you watch a child learn how to walk, there's no being self-conscious at all. They fall and they pick themselves up again and try that step, and they fall and they pick themselves up again, and their parents are beaming with pride, okay? And when I get on the air and I see someone who's just starting out, I will do everything I can to help them, okay? And that's the way it should be. You always never call CQ at a speed that's faster than what you're capable of copying. And if you're answering a CQ, never answer at a speed that's faster than what that other person is sending at. I mean, that's just common courtesy kind of thing. And there are, I know you may not believe this, but there are thousands and thousands of mentors out there that want to help you in your CW journey. There's a CW Ops has a program called the Giving Back program, and you can see schedules where people make themselves available at 7 p.m. local time around the world, just looking for other operators or looking for operators who want to converse at a whatever speed they're comfortable conversing at. All I can say is I tell my students the following. QRS is your friend, okay? If you send QRS to somebody else and they don't slow down, move on, okay? Because they're not worth talking to.
No, I did that. We had a fellow student that posted that there was someone calling at a particular frequency at 7 o'clock local time. And I got on there, didn't hear him. Well, hell, I started calling CQ every night. And the first night I got 4 responses, successful QSOs. The next night it was 5. The next night it was 5. The next night I was late. But the fact that you can't explain to a student how comfortable, what an accomplishment you feel when you hear that other person call your call sign back. That means, number one, you transmitted and they received, and you can hear your call sign back. I mean, I'm not shy about it. The Parks on the Air was the biggest help for me because it's short, abbreviated QSOs. But
And
yeah.
you know what to expect, and it's very simple. All of those things, Vicky, will help, okay? But there is nothing that beats coming out of your shell, okay, and being willing to make a mistake and not being embarrassed by it, okay? I will tell you this. Every CW Academy session that I have, I wind up doing this. 8 dits in a row means I've made a mistake and I have to go back and send again. I cannot have a single on-the-air contact without happening multiple times, all right? I don't use a computer to send. By the way, when you're learning, I don't recommend that to anyone anyway when you're learning, but I've tried it and I can't master it. It's much easier for me to use paddles. But there should be, you shouldn't be concerned about this. And I have, one of the reasons I like advising youth is because they're not self-conscious. And they very much, peer pressure really is the thing that they're kind of in sync with, right? And when they work together, there's nothing that they can't do. Adults tend to be very much more self-conscious. They want to get up to 20 words per minute or 25 words per minute before they make that first contact. And my response is, why? As soon as you've memorized the code, you can be out there making contacts. So. Anybody else? Okay,
Yeah.
Andy, thank you.
Thank you, Andy, for bringing this thing to us. Sincerely, thank you, Andy, and thank you, Bruce.
It's
You're welcome.
John and I work hard on getting people to come and do the talk, so it's great to get you this evening, Bruce. It's fantastic, and yeah, it's been a really informative evening. Brilliant, thank you.
It has. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Cheers. Anybody got any last minute questions for Bruce before we all head off?
Can you stop the recording?
Yeah, I will do.
Hang on, I'll do it now.